Good morning. As we continue now in the Ein Yaakov, it poses the question, "My mevarech." What bracha do you recite when lighting Chanukah candles? And the Gemara answers, "Mevarech asher kidshanu b'mitzvosav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Chanukah." The bracha we recite is that Hashem sanctified us with His mitzvos and commanded us to light the Chanukah candles. That's a problem because lighting Chanukah candles is rabbinic. It's not a Torah commandment. And unlike maybe some rabbinic mitzvos like Eruv, which were created as a fence to ensure that we don't end up transgressing Shabbos, so you could say it's a corollary to the mitzvah of Shabbos or protection on mitzvah of Shabbos. And we can say, well, we were commanded because since we were commanded on Shabbos and we were also commanded in the Torah to make fences, so okay, maybe there's a mitzvah for an Eruv. But Chanukah candles have no basis whatsoever in the Torah. So what is the basis of this Vitzivanu? And He commanded us. So Rav Avya Omer Nilo Sasor. Rav Avya says the basis is from the pasuk, which says that we should not stray from what the Chachamim tell us, from what the sages tell us. Rav Nechemia Omer Rav Nechemia says that we see in the Torah, Sha'al avicha v'yadgedcha, ask your fathers and they will tell you, Zekenecha, your elders, v'yomru lach, and they will say to you. And from this we understand that we need to heed our sages. So that would be the basis for the wording of the bracha to say, Vitzivanu, and He commanded us. Now, in just these short 4 lines, there's actually quite a lot to unpack. So let's get started. So first of all, the wording of the bracha, as brought down over here in the Ein Yaakov and is in the Gemara Bavli, lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. Interestingly, in the Yerushalmi, the wording is al mitzvahs hadlokas ner Chanukah, not to light the Chanukah candles, but the bracha says that we're thanking Hashem for sanctifying us with His mitzvos and commanding us about lighting the Chanukah candles. So one of the things we're going to need to unpack over here is what is the distinction between if it's al mitzvahs hadlokas or if it's lahadlik ner shel Chanukah. Also, interestingly, and this we probably won't get to today, the Arizal says to drop the word shel. He says it should only say lahadlik ner Chanukah, and we will discuss from the Kabbalistic perspective what the significance of dropping the shel and just having lahadlik ner Chanukah. And finally, another issue that we're going to try to deal with is that the Gemara brought down what appears to be a machlokas, a disagreement, as to the source of this mitzvah. Is it from the pasuk of Lo Sasur, do not stray from what the sages command you? Or is it from the pasuk of Sha'al avicha v'yagedcha, zekenecha v'yomru lach, that you should consult with your elders and they will tell you, and that's the basis of why Chazal instituted or had the right to institute a mitzvah of Chanukah candles. So let's start unpacking that one by one. The first issue we raise is that whereas in Erech Gemara it says lahadlik ner, the Yerushalmi's wording is al mitzvahs, on the mitzvah. Now, in general, we find in the mitzvos that we do that some of the brachos for the mitzvos are with a lamid, like leishev basukah. On the other hand, we say al netilas lulav. So in general, we find these two formulas, al or li, by different mitzvos. And so there's a lot of discussion among the Rishonim as to what is the distinction between why some brachos say al, that Hashem commanded us about this mitzvah, and why some begin with li, that Hashem commanded us to do a particular action. Why the distinction? So the Ran, one of the Rishonim, he says that the distinction is as follows, that whenever there is a mitzvah that a person has to perform by himself, and he cannot have someone else do the mitzvah for him, then it says li, that Hashem commanded us to do this mitzvah, because we must actually do the mitzvah, and we cannot appoint a proxy to perform the mitzvah on our behalf. On the other hand, a mitzvah that could be done through the offices of somebody else, through the agency of somebody else, then it says, al, that Hashem commanded us about the mitzvah, that maybe it's our responsibility to see to it that the mitzvah is performed, but not that we actually have to do it ourselves. And if so, then it would seem that over here, when it comes to Chanukah candles, where you could appoint someone else to light the Chanukah candles in your home on your behalf, or if you're actually a guest in somebody's home, rather than you lighting Chanukah candles, you could have the homeowner light the candles on your behalf. So it would seem that the formula of the Yerushalmi of saying al is more appropriate than our wording that we say lehadlik. Although some want to suggest that even if you ask someone else to light on your behalf, you are required to contribute some money towards the cost of the oil and the wicks. And therefore, you have to be involved in the doing of the mitzvah to that extent. And that's why the bracha begins with the word lehadlik and not just al. Rabbeinu Tam understands a different distinction between the brachos that say al and the brachos that say le. He says certain mitzvos are over in an instant. So, for example, a bris milah, cut, you're done. For those mitzvos, we say al. Those mitzvos which last a long time, for example, the wearing of tzitzis, those are prefaced with the le. And it would seem that over here, when it comes to Chanukah candles, there is no length of time. Because you do the mitzvah, you light the candles, and you're done. You have no more responsibility beyond that. It's not like you're wearing the tzitzis all day long. But the Rosh explains that since the Chanukah candles are meant to continue being lit for at least a half an hour, so even though you're not actively doing the mitzvah, it's still considered to be a mitzvah which takes time. The Ravan says that since most of us are careful to follow the concept of Mahadrin and Min Mahadrin, and to be lighting every night except for the first night more than one candle, so therefore when you light the first candle, the mitzvah is not over. And the mitzvah continues for some time after that as you go on to light the rest of the candles. And that's why it is a mitzvah which lasts time. In terms of the rabbinic injunction over here, according to the Rambam, because we learn from Psukim that we are required to heed the injunctions of the sages, and we learned over here, let's say from Lo Sasur or from Sha'al Avicha, Therefore, every single dirabanan, every rabbinic injunction is really a Torah injunction. The Ramban says, no, that's not true. A rabbinic injunction is not a Torah injunction. It's only a rabbinic injunction. But he explains that the difference between the two psukim brought over here is that, as we mentioned earlier, certain injunctions that the sages made have a basis in the Torah. Either they derived from psukim that it was appropriate to do, or they were fences around the Torah. Those types of injunctions we learn from the pasuk of Lo Sasur, not to stray from the words of the sages whatsoever. Beyond that, there are certain things that the sages instituted, like Chanukah candles, that have no basis in the Torah whatsoever. And for those, we learn that we must heed them from the psukim of Sha'al Avicha v'Yagedcha, Zekenecha v'Yom Rulach, that we have a responsibility to heed the words of the sages, even as an example that we just gave, that there is no basis of psukim in the Torah for this particular injunction. Mirz Hashem, in our next shir, we will discuss the Arizal's changing the formula of the bracha.